you can try. You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy this evening because we have as our guest Dan Proft, who really, there's nobody in Illinois, and folks, I'm not kidding now, there's nobody in Illinois who knows more about politics and Illinois public policy. That combination. Some know more public policy, some know more politics, but nobody knows more than our guest, Dan Proft. Why? Well, he spent 15 years doing campaign consulting and then a little corporate PR. And then he ran for governor in the Republican primary, as everybody knows, because a lot of our viewers, I'd say 90% of our viewers, because of, no, as I say, 90% of our viewers voted for you, Dan. But, you know, 90% of 10 is, what, 9 votes? And you got more than 9 votes. So still just goofing around here with Dan, but he does know politics. He does know public policy. He did run for governor. He did have a tremendous impact on that race. In the debates, in the forums, nobody came up with more interesting and, well, nobody came up with more interesting ideas as to how to solve a number of problems that the state of Illinois faces. And now I'm being very serious, whether it's pension reform, whether it's education reform, whether it's transportation, public safety, all the big ticket items were addressed by Dan, and he forced people like Kirk Dillard, the more conventional types running in that race, like Kirk Dillard, like Bill Brady, like who is the other conventional? Jack Ryan, no, Jim Ryan, and Andy McKenna Jr., and Adam Andrzejewski was like you, a reformer. So who's the 6th person I've left out? Did I leave out somebody?
Bob Schillerstrom.
Yeah, no, I thought there was somebody else. So Brady we mentioned, and we mentioned Dillard. Wasn't there somebody more conventional there?
It was so long ago. Well, let's be
prospective.
Let's let it. Yes.
So the thing we'd like to know from Dan, we're taping this on Sunday, November 11th, 7 days after, well, after I had thought, and Dan thought, that the Republican Party couldn't go any lower. We had thought before this election they had hit rock bottom long ago, at least in 2010 when they managed to blow an election. Think about this. Illinois has like 100, 200 billion in unfunded debt. Illinois has a school systems across the state of Illinois that the only word, folks, to describe it, it sucks. Can we say that? I just did. I hope we can say it. Because the mainstream people who've been on the show, like, you know, Robin Staines from Advance Illinois, she says, across the state of Illinois, you want to take a guess? How many people do you think she said read at grade level in the public schools in 3rd grade across the state of Illinois? Give me a number. 20%, 40%, 30%, 50%? Give me a number.
Probably half.
Yeah, no, 30%. Across the state of Illinois. No, that's for the white folks. And I don't mean to be racial about this, but we do know there's an achievement gap. And so the number for black kids at 3rd grade, it would be about 25% reading at grade level. And I said, well, what about Chicago? She said, well, then we notch it down from there. So this is what you have, a school system that sucks. You've got a fiscal system that's a mess, hundreds of billions of dollars, literally, of unfunded pension debt. People are walking around saying, we can't help the people who are truly needy in health care. We can't help them. We can't do anything in education. We can't do school choice. The only people who get choice are Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. When they were here, they chose to send their kids to the lab school. So my director's just reminding me I've wasted 5 minutes into the show, but Dan, hearing all of that, how is it the Republican Party, number one, could lose the race for governor in 2010, of which you were a part, at least in the primary, when Bill Brady lost to Pat Quinn, and two, how could the Republican Party think it was going to take the majority in 2012 in the State House, dump Speaker Mike Madigan as the Speaker, and instead of winning the net gain of 6 seats, they lost 7, and they lost 4 in the Senate. So the Senate now is 39 to 19.
40 to 19.
40 to 19, excuse me, I stand corrected, 40 to 19. I think I have to correct the graphic. And it's 71 to 47 in the State House. Why don't the Republicans, really folks, why don't you just stay home? I mean, don't bother going to Springfield if you're a state rep. Don't bother, just take your check. Nobody will say anything. I rest my case. Dan can now speak for the next 6 minutes.
Oh, there's a lot there. I mean, I think there's a few things at play. One is some of those people have not just retired from the Republican Party, they've fled the state of Illinois. Of course, we've net lost nearly 1 million people over the last 15 years, and I think a lot of those people had a center-right sensibility. I think, of course, the Democrats drew the map as well, and Mike Madigan, John Cullerton, the Chicago Democrats are very good cartographers. So that was at play as well. And these are some of the actual conditions on the ground that are legitimate points to make from the establishment of the Republican Party. You'll hear Tom Cross, you'll hear Christine Radogno, the respective leaders in the two chambers make these points. And that's all well and good. But I think there's something more fundamental happening and a more fundamental challenge the Republican Party in Illinois faces. And that really is the business enterprise in toto has failed. And when you have such comprehensive failure, when you are vaporized the way Republicans were vaporized on November 6th in Illinois, I think it demands a complete reconstitution of this organized political party. And that means looking at the 50% plus one voter composition model we're operating under. That means re-examining the message we are trying to deliver to the constituencies we say are our constituencies. And that means looking at the machinery of the party and campaigns in terms of delivering that vote, not just on Election Day, but of course leading up to Election Day as well. I think the reason we thought we could make progress is because of the catastrophic failure of Chicago Democrat rule. All three branches of government for the last decade, a couple of those branches for much longer than that. And so you look at Illinois being the bad example across almost every financial competency metric. Illinois being the bad example when it comes to quality of life across almost every economic indicator. And you say, well, people have got to have had enough of this. People have got to be open to embracing change, but they're not open to embracing change if they're not sure what they are going to change out for Chicago Democrats. And this is the brand failure of the Republican Party in the state, right? The Republican Party, that's a brand. That is a promise to deliver fill in the blank. And because we haven't defined what filling in the blank looks like, what it sounds like, what it means, what Republican governance of the state would mean for people, we continue to get our brains beat in by mediocre intellects and street criminals from Chicago. And until the party is serious...
Excuse me, just for one second. Mediocre intellects and the examples would be?
I mean, I don't know. Pick a Democrat state legislator out of a hat.
No, but just give people. You
how,
said.
How about mediocre intellects? How about 2 terms for Rod Blagojevich? I mean, how's that for an example? So this is the real challenge for the party. And I think one of the things that has been a failure...
Okay, so just to stop for a second, we've got this book called Golden. Let's see if we can get a flash of that. Golden.
Yeah.
By Jeff Cohen and John Chase from the Chicago
I'm not interested in talking about Rod Blagojevich, and here's why. Because here's what the Republican Party...
But people should know, you may want to take a look at this book. We now have an underwriter, a bookstall in Winnetka. Okay. You can find that book there at the bookstall in Winnetka. And also, these two folks, you may not see this show on the air for a while, but you probably will see it on YouTube. I think they'll be speaking on the 14th. We're taping the show on the 11th, so on Wednesday of this week coming up. You can find them at the University Club speaking at lunch. Let me interrupt just to say, have you read this book?
I have not.
Okay.
But what I would say about going back to Blagojevich, it's a good example of what we've done for the past decade as Republicans. What we've said is we define ourselves by who we are not. We're not Chicago Democrats, and we think that's enough. It is not enough. We need to define who we are, constituencies specifically that we would like to represent and make overtures to those constituencies, and explain the quality of life impacts that our policy vision would have. If when we don't do that, we allow ourselves to be caricatured as we were in this election cycle. We put ourselves on defense all the time, even though we know what's coming. And this is very, very disquieting. C.S. Lewis.
When you say we, who do you mean by we?
Allow ourselves to be put on defense?
Yeah, when you say we allow ourselves.
I'm talking about the Republican Party. No, I'm a Republican. I'm an Illinois Republican, so I'm talking about the Republican Party.
Do you allow yourself to be put on defense?
Well, I don't, but I'm not in charge of anything except my radio show.
Yeah.
I ran for governor and I lost.
We should let people know you can find Dan usually on WLS 890 AM radio. Usually his slot is 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. The show is known as Bruce and Dan I think it should be Dan and Bruce. I'm going to talk to Bruce about that.
I appreciate that.
But it is known as Bruce and Dan, or sometimes Wolf and Proft, for your good sidekick. And very seriously, it's a very interesting show. There's a lot of humor. I think Bruce and you are a really excellent combination.
Thank you.
Good sense of humor. Not to say you don't have a sense of humor, but Bruce may edge you out on that aspect. You probably edge Bruce out on perhaps knowledge of politics and economics.
I think I more than edge him out on that. But
the point is,
edge.
it's a great
Yes.
combination. Tracy, who came up with that? Tracy?
Well, the WLS management. Yeah, that was the partnership.
They deserve a pat on the back, and I assume the ratings are going well.
The show is going well, so we're very happy and appreciative of our listeners.
And now you can find them 5 in the morning to 9 in the morning, because Don and Roma are not on the air, because sadly Don has had some problems. People anticipate and hope he'll be coming back in 3 or 4 weeks.
He's had an illness.
Had an illness.
And he's dealing with that health challenge, and we obviously hope he recovers quickly and is back with all due speed.
Would you say Don and Roma, that slot, at least when Don and Roma were there, was the highest rated spot in Chicago?
It's one of the
top rated spots.
It's one of the top rated shows in Chicago, without question.
All right,
always.
So the kind of thing you're hearing now, would you say they can hear the kind of thing that you're saying now on WLS when it's Bruce and Dan and that 5 to 9?
Well, we cover, obviously 4 hours, we cover a lot of topics.
A lot of pop culture.
Well, some pop culture, some sports, but
a lot of national. Angela Jolie and Brad Pitt. What was the phrase you put for those two folks?
It's not my phrase, but Bradgelina.
Bradgelina, there you go.
Yeah.
So our director, Angelica, who's somewhat younger than the folks currently talking.
This is very
she
much.
would know about Brad
this is very much like
Angelica.
Our show, actually, where I have to keep Bruce from getting 72 degrees off topic.
But people like that. That's why I listen, so I can hear that. I want to hear Bruce driving you off topic 72 degrees.
Yes.
Sometimes I'd like to see him do it 74 degrees, but 72 I'll settle for.
Okay.
All right, so going back to what you were saying about the Republican Party being put on the defensive, you're saying they shouldn't be. They should hone in on what is the message they're trying to deliver, what is the mechanism by which that message is delivered, and then how do they get out the vote on Election Day? Did I get that right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
putting it a little more succinctly.
That wasn't more succinctly, but that's a fair summary. So the challenge, the thing that's been puzzling to me over the last decade, as we have wandered in the wilderness as a party in Illinois, is we are very risk averse and we have very little to lose. Now, I know individual legislators have something to lose because they like their little perches, they like their little fiefdoms. But we as a party should not be defined by people who want to protect themselves from competition.
What did you call that, warlordocracy?
Warlordocracy, right.
So there are a bunch of warlords,
people running
also known
around
as Republican state reps, Republican state senators.
Yeah.
Would you say that Christine Radogno, is she a warlord? But she heads up the Republican
warlordocracy writ large. So that includes everybody, myself included, because I have a particular vision and I have a particular strategic and tactical approach I think should be adopted.
And you have a constituency, you have a following,
adopted.
right? You got 8% of the vote, that's a following.
So my point is to say that the problem that I have seen is risk aversion when we have very little to lose, and that's really a challenge. I mean, C.S. Lewis, the great author, says that the foundation, or courage is the foundation of every virtue at its testing point. And I think, so in other words, if you don't have courage, you can possess no virtue because you're not willing to display that virtue when it's challenged. And I think that's been a good way to describe the problem with the Republican Party. When challenged about our alleged virtues, we have routinely backed down as opposed to displaying the courage to defend those virtues, to defend those policies, to defend a worldview consistent with our first principles.
Because the party is lacking in virtue, so they back down.
It's not lacking in virtue, it's lacking in courage.
Courage.
And if you don't have courage, you cannot possess virtue, because you're not willing to defend anything you say you represent.
Would you say it's rational for these state reps who are there, the 47 who are left, the 19 state senators who are left who are Republicans, should they be risk-taking, or should they be worried about hanging on to their $70,000 a year job?
Well,
or,
I mean,
because are these people, would you say the alternative for them is selling milk, and they might not make as much as $70,000 a year?
I think some people would not make. This is a part-time job. Remember, being a legislator.
Well, for some people, it's a full-time job.
Well, right, but conceptually, it's a part-time job. Right. And I think there are many people in the General Assembly who this is, for whom this is the best job they ever had and ever could possibly have. And that's a problem.
Like
so they're very
Mulligan.
protective.
Let's take that as an example, make it a real world example. We had a race. There was a race out there. Rosemary Mulligan, people would know, Northwest Suburbs. She was a moderate Republican. Some would say Republican in name only. I don't know if that's fair or unfair. Anyway, the lady kind of, well, I don't know if we can say this, but sort of lost her mind, I think. Rosemary, you can come on and defend yourself. But if you're an incumbent, as she was, and you can't get your name on the ballot, which she couldn't, right?
That's right.
Then people would say you probably lost your mind, or you've lost your drive, or you're not paying attention. So the Republican Party, they found somebody else who did a write-in vote. She had to do write-in to get her name on the ballot. So the point of, Susan Sweeney was running, and she was nominated. Rosemary Mulligan was upset. So Rosemary says, I'll get you. I'll come and endorse the Democrat because he's pro-choice, and Susan Sweeney wasn't. Susan Sweeney could have come on this show and done exactly what you said. She could have said, I want to talk to the voters, and I want to tell you about the mess that's the pension system. And I want you to know specifically what I would do. I'd raise the retirement age, I'd increase the employee contribution, I'd move toward a 401k, I'd reduce the COLA. She declined to do that after saying she would. No, I'm not picking on Susan.
So let me make a point.
It's a real world example. And then you'll make
and I'll build on that real world example to make an actual point about principle.
I just want in conclusion, folks, everybody's clapping now. In conclusion, she didn't. She canceled 24 hours before, some hokey excuse. Then further, she went, and her campaign consultant told me, they don't want to do that. They don't want to take those positions. That's not their debate strategy. So they'll just lambast and say something about pensions. And that's when she was planning to come on her. She wasn't going to be very specific. Then she has a debate, and I watched the debate at the Journal Topics Forum, and she just says pablum. She didn't say what you said, Dan. She didn't talk, specifically what has to be done. And you know what? She lost. She lost big time, okay? So if I'm Susan Sweeney, did you learn anything from that? Did you fire your campaign consultant? Did you go to Tom Cross and say, why the hell did I run this campaign this way and lose it? Now, am I being too harsh on Susan Sweeney?
Yes, you are. You're being ridiculously harsh. And let me inform your view. So if I can speak uninterrupted more than 2 sentences. One is the real takeaway from that, to your point, this example you provided, Rosemary Mulligan endorsing the Democrat. She's also the Maine Township Republican committee woman. So the point is she holds a party post and she endorses the other party. This has been a systemic problem in the Republican Party in this state, which is we have enemies inside our perimeter that we tolerate and that we rationalize. And so they become a cancer on the party and the caucus. Let me give you the best example, Ray LaHood, who was a congressman when he was part of the Republican congressional delegation. He tried to tube Peter Fitzgerald. He was a cancer on the caucus. He was a cancer on the party. What did he end up becoming? Obama's transportation secretary.
Well, he's a bipartisan guy. Yeah, he's trying to work across the aisle. You're saying you shouldn't be bipartisan?
So let me explain to you. So when you have the enemy inside your perimeter, if you cannot deal with that problem, then it's going to be very difficult to win. In addition to that, the enemy inside your perimeter problem, which is a substantial problem. This transcends moderate conservative. And I want to make that clear because you will hear Jim Edgar, you will hear other people come out and say, well, it's just because we're too conservative on this issue or that issue. Nonsense.
So if they say Sweeney lost but she's pro-life, you're saying nonsense?
It's nonsense. And the people that...
Mulligan wouldn't have betrayed her if she had been pro-choice, right?
And Mulligan couldn't get on the ballot, and she's pro-choice.
So Mulligan doesn't even matter.
The people who take that position, that simple-minded position, need to explain to me Judy Biggert, need to explain to me Bob Dole, two moderate congressional Republicans who lost. They need to explain to me moderate incumbent Republican state legislators who lost, like Sid Mathias and Sandy Cole and Skip Saviano. It's just so much more comprehensive than a particular issue.
It's the Hispanic movement in many places, and Republicans didn't go after the Hispanic vote, so the demographics are against the Republican Party. Did Rich Miller, who's got a monopoly in a sense through capital effects, we love Rich, okay? Rich, come on the show. But he does sort of have a monopoly. There's nothing read as regularly by most people involved in politics in Illinois as Rich Miller's capital effects.
Okay.
Okay? And he says much of this problem was the Republican Party getting swamped by this large Hispanic turnout, and the Republican Party has not only not wooed the Hispanic vote, it has rejected, it has not welcomed it. What do you say, Rich Miller?
Let me say two things to that. One is There is truth to our failure to reach out to non-traditional GOP constituencies and make a play for them. Make sure that they understand that we have their interests at heart, that we want them to achieve for themselves what they want to achieve for themselves and their families, but we just may have a different way of helping them get there than the Democrats do. I think we have not been good at communicating that message. And so one of the things that Latino voters, since they went 80-20 against us in Illinois, say is, it's not a particular issue position. It's a general sense that the Republican Party isn't interested in me, maybe doesn't even like me. And so it's very hard for me to, even if I may agree with them on some issues and disagree on some, it's very hard for me to even contemplate them because they're essentially rejecting me out of hand. And we have to deal with that perception because it's not true.
How do you change it? Oh, that's a perception, but it's not true.
Well, it's not. It may be true for some Republicans, but I think they're the very small minority. It's certainly not true for me. It's not true for many conservatives.
Is it true for Bill Brady?
No, I don't think so.
Did he actively go out and woo and let these people know that they would be welcome?
I don't think
to his party,
I don't think
his movement?
I don't think the Republican Party has done a good job generally. And
did Kirk Dillard do it?
Here is the problem, Jeff. Jeff, the problem is
you don't want to name names.
The Republican Party structure, the superstructure, should be engaged in mass marketing every day of every year, so that the specific candidates and campaigns you're mentioning can be engaged in hyper-targeting in the short horizon that is a political campaign. And because we don't have a sensible distribution of labor and we don't have a strategic approach where somebody's going to be responsible for the mass marketing education component that goes on every day of every year so that you can cultivate the ground for particular campaigns, we lose and we continue to rinse and repeat over and over again.
Who is responsible? Is it the state GOP Central Committee that's not performing? Is it Pat Brady, who will be our guest next week, who's the Illinois GOP, what's his title?
State Party Chairman.
State Party Chairman. Do we blame Pat Brady? Do we blame Chris Redonio, the Republican Senate leader? Do we blame Tom Cross, the House Republican leader? Because somebody has to be accountable. Republicans are big on saying,
I totally agree.
So which of these three people have I should be accountable?
I think, look, I think there absolutely has to be self-accountability, because if there is not, then people don't have confidence that you would be accountable to them.
So should they all be replaced?
And I think
should they all be replaced?
I think Tom Cross and Christine Redonio have had ample time to demonstrate what leadership they will or will not provide.
It was about a decade, right? A decade of losses.
For Tom Cross.
6 or 8 years for Chris.
About 4 years for Redonio.
She's going downhill.
I think there does need to be change out in leadership. So I think
that's
part of it.
What about Pat Brady?
I think Pat Brady did what he said he was going to do. Okay. I think he got the money from the National Republican Party. He operated the victory centers. He was congressional race focused. I think he did precisely what he said he would do. And then it's a requirement for the rest of the superstructure to do what they said they were going to do. And much of the rest of that superstructure didn't. But let me say one more thing about Latino voters, because this again, if you think that this is one issue position, one constituency, anybody who thinks that is missing how comprehensive the problem is. And let me just underscore this with one data point. Of the 31 target races in the State House and State Senate, as broadly defined as you can define the phrase target races, Republicans, 31 target races in the House Senate, Republicans won 2. And those 2 really weren't target races. They were Republican districts that held on. So my point is to say this is statewide.
0 for 31.
It is across constituencies. Well, 2 for 31.
2 for 31.
It is across constituencies. It is so much bigger than moderate conservative. And that's why an appropriate, comprehensive discussion and solution needs to be provided.
Redonio should go. You're saying Cross should go. Brady shouldn't. But it's much more than that.
Yes,
how does that more get accomplished? How do you do it?
How do you do it? It's both personnel changes and programmatic changes.
And how do you do it other than replacing those 2 people?
That's part of it. One tangible thing that's next for me, if I would say, what do I do before the holidays set in if I'm a Republican leader in the state? The first thing I do is make a public statement and put together a coalition of the willing of people that are interested in rethinking how the Republican Party operates, and send a message to the Illinois electorate that we received your market feedback. We get it. We are going to reintroduce that brand.
Are you putting together a coalition of like-minded Republicans so you and they can come out with something that grabs the people before the end of the year? Are you doing that?
I'm trying to be a part of that, yes.
So other people are doing this as well?
I'm trying to enlist other people that are similarly interested to do something on that order.
Can you give us a progress report in terms
I think there's a lot of people that are interested.
Can you name some names of people who are interested?
No,
in
I'm not going to name names. I think there are people that are interested.
Has to be a secret or something?
I think that there are people that are interested that are both have leadership titles in the party, that are elected officials, that are grassroots activists, that are Tea Party leaders.
Have you spoken with Congressman Kirk? Actually, I've spoken with Senator Kirk.
I have not.
Because actually, Senator Kirk was interviewed, it looked like in the parking lot, I saw on Fox Chicago Sunday today, November 11th, and Mike Flannery was pounding him on the immigration issue, whether the Republicans should get behind comprehensive immigration, and Senator Kirk said, there's no consensus, it shouldn't even be addressed. Do you agree with Mark Kirk? Did Senator Kirk, and we know he's got a lot of problems, and we're certainly not trying to pick on him, but he did say that was his statement. Did Senator Kirk, given the spotlight by Mike Flannery, get it right this morning?
I didn't see the statement, so I'm not going to comment on a statement I didn't see. I'm not going to do it.
I'm telling you what it was.
Well,
you don't trust me to say things accurately?
I'm not going to comment on what I didn't see. But I think we need to have a larger message, a larger narrative to share with Latino voters than just a particular issue position on a particular issue.
We're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I so much want to thank Dan Proft for coming here. I think this has been very enlightening.
Yes,
seriously.
It's always a fun discussion.
No,
it's always spirited too, which I like.
All right, so you've laid the groundwork for what the Republican Party should do. Let me probe a little bit. Should school voucher, school choice be a big part of this?
Absolutely.
Okay, because that would be reaching out to a non-traditional Republican constituency, namely Hispanics and African Americans, and perhaps other low-income people of all stripes.
Precisely.
Right?
This is one of the areas where we have not demonstrated the courage I spoke about earlier in the show, and we should demonstrate courage because this is something that transcends race and gender. It's about children's educational opportunities and parents' aspirations for their children, directly correlated to the kind of schools they can access. And why the Republican Party can't speak with a singular voice on this issue is beyond me.
And we should mention, you've of course read Milton Friedman's book, Capitalism and Freedom, right?
Yes.
And we hold this up because this, our regular viewers will know we've been talking about this book for a while. This year is the 100th anniversary of Milton Friedman's birth. Okay, he would have been 100 if he were alive today. It is the 50th anniversary of the publication of this book, Capitalism and Freedom, by the University of Chicago Press. He first wrote his article of vouchers in 1955. I'm sure other economists may have written about it before. The University of Chicago, where Milton Friedman taught for decades, has been celebrating in a variety of ways this year. The Becker-Friedman Institute, which is named for Gary Becker, Nobel Prize laureate, and Milton Friedman, Nobel Prize laureate, has just had a program celebrating this.
And to invoke Victor Hugo, there's nothing so powerful as an idea whose time has come, and the time has come for school choice.
And what I was saying there, that there was a convergence perhaps between Rahm Emanuel and the University of Chicago Economics Department and Business School, because Gary Becker was talking about, well, what do you find? You find privatization. Milton was once asked by somebody who was about to become a regulator, what should I do? What do you advise? Okay? Milton said, privatize, privatize, privatize. That should be perhaps the motto of the Republican Party in the state of Illinois.
I don't know if that's the motto, but I think that's...
it gets people thinking. It gets people thinking.
Well,
but the other thing he said...
That's a disposition, it's not a motto.
The other thing he said, when does this happen? When do you privatize? When do you change? When do these economic ideas of Milton Friedman take hold? Floating exchange rates, abolishment of the draft, and so forth. When there's a crisis, when people sense there's a need for change. What greater time than now than a need for change to look for Milton Friedman and the free market for ways to do things?
Well, look, and there is a...
And that's what Rahm Emanuel said, never waste a crisis.